say goodbye. Paisi non homai, veduto vissuto con te.
What's going on, guys? Burgz here from The Casual Athlete, and this is it. We have reached the last tipping video of the season, and as a result of that, I've brought in the big dog, the one, the only, Longy. Mate, thanks for coming on the show. Your first tipping video of the season this year, and it's the grand final, mate. How do you feel? Do you feel special?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a chance to go 100%
Yeah.
in my tipping for this year, so I'm pretty excited. Or I could go 0% and be the worst tipper you've had on the show. So
hey,
it's
mate,
all or nothing.
It's been a mixed bag this year, to be completely honest, but no doubt I've had a lot of fun. Everyone else has had a lot of fun as well. But what we will do before we go into the tips, guys, just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week. We will be here all off season as well, getting into a few different videos, I think, which will be interesting for you guys. So let us know how those are going down in the comments section below. Now, we get into last week's tips, and we had the Roosters taking on the Storm on Friday night, and we had Joey on the podcast last week. Nice Roosters fan, and he wanted to back his boys, and I went with Melbourne 1-12, but I did not see this scoreline coming. Was it a very disappointing way for the Roosters to end their season?
It's a rough one. I mean, they had no Sam Walker, which I think did play a part. They had that really bad call with the knock-on as well. Led to a try. I will say that was at a moment where the Chooks were looking like they were fighting back and they were bringing it into a close game. And if they didn't have that try scored against them, they might have gone on with it. Like, probably wouldn't have, but might have. And that try sort of broke their back, and then they just conceded a bunch after that. So I think it was a closer game than the scoreline suggests. But for the Chooks, you go into next year without Joey Manu, without Luke Keary, without Joseph Suoli'i, without Jared Weir-Hargraves. A bunch of guys aren't going to be there. It's sort of the end for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exciting times, I actually think. A lot of people are talking about the sort of downside of losing a lot of those players, but I think this is a position that the Roosters possibly haven't been in the last 10 years, where they've had all of these players, all of these great players. I'm not going to take anything away from guys like Keary, Joseph Manu, Jared Weir-Hargraves. They have been immense for that club over the last 5-10 years or so, but I just think that maybe the Roosters fans need to obviously mourn this period of time, but it is sad to see those players leave, but think about the future and what you could possibly bring into the club. They've signed some great guys like Mark Nwanganitawase. I think he's going to be great next year. They could find a spot for him in that outside backs. There's plenty of positions up for availability with Suoli'i leaving as well. And guys like Billy Smith, who possibly need to get fit and stay on the field. And once they do, they can then go on with it. I just thought on the weekend as well, in regards to the game, Melbourne really had a plan of attack and they executed it to perfection, especially with the first couple of tries that they scored. They went at Keary so hard. They obviously saw something during the week where maybe him and Crichton didn't really get on the same page, and Angus Crichton looked like he was being run ragged, especially by Ryan Pappenhausen, and that ball on the inside to Nick Meaney as well really caught Keary out of position. He was very indecisive, I thought, and it did cost them early. But you think with the Roosters' attack, they definitely had a chance to come back into the game, and they did. They got to 6 points, and that was the time that, maybe the Roosters can go on and win this. We gave them a glimmer of hope, and they just couldn't make it happen and really let it slip towards the end of the game. And Munster added on a few tries as well to really ice that one there. But unfortunately for the Roosters, that does end their season. Melbourne move on to the grand final, which we will speak about in just a moment. The other game that we had was the Panthers taking on the Sharks. And in this one, I had Penrith running away with it. I had them winning 30+. I was absolutely giving it to Blindside, to Jai in our group chat during the week, and no doubt he was going back at me for a lot of things. One thing I want to ask you, though, is there's been a lot of talk about Nicho Hynes. And again, we're going to be talking about him here. Did he do enough? I mean, he had 2 tackle breaks, 25 tackles, 2 misses, 9 runs, 60 meters, but only 4 kicks and 109 kick meters. Is he a number 7?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really thought of him as a 7, like pure 7. He's more of a 6. And I think coming to next year, I'll go back to Nicho Hynes' question. So I'm a big Nicho fan in general. I think he's a lot of fun to watch. He's a very exciting footy player. He's probably been hard done by in how some of the games have broken that he's been in. So some of the Origin appearances, for example, and some of his club finals games as well. But I think going into next year, they've just got to go, all right, they got to look at their halves and say, you know what, Trindle's now a mature half in this league. He's not a niche guy who might come in. He's now locked into that 7 jersey. We need to decide who's our 7, who's our 6, because the two of them sort of seem to play back and forth on who's that dominant half in that team. And it just doesn't work, right? Because it's a different formula every single week. So I think next year it's got to come in and it's got to go, all right, these are the roles that we're going to play with you guys. This is the role that Will Kennedy plays on the back of that, and then everyone else can play off that more predictably. So, yeah, it's a hard one, though, with Nicho Hynes, because I'm sort of saying that I think he needs to play more evenly with Braden Trindle, or maybe even take a back seat to Trindle as the 7. Not that I'm saying he is a full-blown 7.
I think he's already doing that, though. I feel like for Nicho, it just hasn't been a great comeback from injury. Yeah. I know there was that period where he was out for 6 weeks, and that's always tough to come back from, especially when it's a broken leg. You might lose a little bit of, game speed, maybe game fitness as well. Yeah. But I think they went hard at him as well, Penrith, the other night, and they had some success. I think Alamotti strolled over a couple of times. One was between the gap between him and Ramian, or no, it wasn't Ramian, it was Talakai the other night. But I just think for Nicho, really needs to find that confidence that he had in 2022, where he just came out, he was full of confidence on the back of a great 2021 season at fullback and was shoved into the 7 role, and none of us really thought that it was going to go as well as it did, especially that year. But then they came up against the Cowboys in the final, and I think ever since that moment, there's always been this doubt in everyone's mind that Nicho really isn't the man for the job and that he can't get it done, but he's on a lot of money over there. And I do think they get better next year with Adam Fanua-Blake coming into the team, with him being in there. It will allow Nicho to play on the front foot a lot more, because Aden is so good at getting those post-contact meters, so good at a quick play the ball, and Nicho really needs that speed out of the ruck to be able to inject himself into a profitable running game for the team, because while he had 9 runs the other night, none of it was post-contact meters. There was no
9's not enough, by the way. So if we're talking about him being a more permanent 6 next year, and saying you're playing 5/8, mate, like you're not playing this hybrid halfback 5/8 sort of position. You're playing pure 5/8. Well, let's look at good 5/8 seasons, right? So go look at Dylan Brown in 2022. Go look at Cody Walker in 2021. Go look at Cam Munster, whatever game you decide to. Like he always does it, and look at their numbers and sort of go, all right, when that team was back against the wall, what was that guy doing? And I can speak as a para fan about Dylan Brown when we were doing well, which is not this year. He was pounding the rock and running 150 meters a game.
Yep.
And he was very effective on defense. He wasn't kicking much, right? But he was very involved in the attack, feeding a lot of short balls. And because he was running the ball 15 times, every time he took it to the line, looked at Lane next to him, there was a lot of indecision in the defense. So Nicho has the weapons to do that. But if he's going to play 6, he's got to run the ball 10 to 15 times a game. The injury might have stopped him from doing that. So maybe that's the issue there. But I think he'll come back next year, be solid. Probably won't be picking him in fantasy myself, though. I think Trindle will take more control.
That was the question I was going to ask you, considering we got the fantasy guru here. I was going to ask you his fantasy prospects for next year. So interesting take there, guys. Possibly not going to be taking Nicho Hynes.
I won't take him in a single draft.
Wow.
And
is that because you had him this year in a lot of drafts?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and there we go.
No, I just think Trindle has been too effective in big games to ignore, right? So he's not Matt Moylan. Matt Moylan was a pure running 6. And that's the thing that's really interesting as well. Trindle's come in. Hynes' best form was next to Moylan, who was a pure running 6. And he was a pure 7, Hynes, at that time. So that's what I'm talking about, this hybrid here. They're unclear. I think Cronulla work better off a simple sort of game plan.
Definitely. And Trindle, also off contract at the end of next year, will be going to November 1 this year, testing his market value, which I think is very interesting.
I mean, he's got a market, right? So, yes. I mean, the Western Bears, for example, get a guy like Trindle, wouldn't be bad. I think there's a few teams that can pay for him.
I think the Roosters could use him next year as well as a 6 next to Keary, and have Chad Townsend be the mentor guy towards both of those guys. I think the Roosters...
Yeah, next to Sammy Walker. That's not the worst idea.
Yeah.
Because Sam Walker's not a pure traditional 7 either.
No. Plays off the cuff as well. Yeah. They're both off the cuff players.
That's kind of exciting, actually.
I love that. I love that.
Good weapons on the edges. Teddy's maturity there takes a bit of pressure off.
Absolutely.
It's actually kind of interesting.
This is why I think the Roosters are so exciting next year, because they've got all this money in the bag where they can throw money at guys like Trindle who are off contract, and no doubt the Sharks want to keep him. He probably would like to stay there, considering the form that he showed this year. But I just think with the Sharks, they've got a couple of guys in reserve grade that could do a lot, and they just won the grand final with the Jets as well. So the reserve grade side's going on.
Would you throw to Atkinson then and sort of go, all right, you know what? We actually won more games with Atkinson as a percentage than any other half at this club. I thought Atkinson was really good. So Atkinson runs super direct.
Yep.
He's very threatening with the ball in hand. He can kick. He's not a traditional 7, but there were games where he took over as the only half with Brayley next to him in the halves.
The Melbourne game
good.
is the one that stands out the most for me, because they didn't have Trindle or Hines.
No.
They played Blake Brayley at halfback.
Yeah, McInnes to hooker.
5'8". And Daniel Atkinson was the best player on the field.
Yeah.
I think it might have been his 5th or 4th NRL game by that point as well.
Yeah. But he can play a role is what I'm getting at, right?
Absolutely.
And this is the issue with Trindle and Hines. They're both sort of playing that alpha playmaker role.
Yep.
And it's just messy. No one's really certain what's going on. Atkinson would step into the secondary half role next to either of them.
Yep.
And I think that clarity helps them out a lot. And
Definitely.
he just pounds the ball like we were talking about. Nico could do that job better, by the way. But they've just got to make the call on what that job is. So
absolutely. And I don't think Atkinson's best role is coming in off the bench for Talakai in the centers, which is what they did.
He can do it. He can do it.
He can definitely do it.
He can do anything. Like, I actually really like him.
No, he's a big fan. He's played wing this year as well.
Yeah,
so like he started on the wing for the
Yeah.
Sharks. So they clearly rate him highly as a utility back,
Yep.
kind of in the same way that they probably rated Connor Tracy.
Yeah.
But I'd say Atkinson has more serviceability as a half than
Yep.
Connor Tracy did. But that is it for the Sharks this year. Unfortunately, they don't get to the grand final. They fall one short, and Penrith move into their 5th grand final in a row, which we will get onto in just a second. But before we do, guys, I'm just going to update you guys about the tipping comp that we have been running all season. And Callan the Dark Knight is in first position on 146 points, up by 2. So he will take home the gold this year. Well done, Callan. We'll get in contact with you on trying to get some prize out to you this year. Thank you to everyone who has been joining the tipping comp and leaving all your comments this year. I have thoroughly loved it, and we will go again next year, possibly on TBC Live, and we'll see what happens with the TBC Live tipping comp as
register
well.
for TBC right now, actually, because there will be prizes next year, free jerseys, maybe grand final tickets, all that sort of thing for our tipping comp next year on TBC. So get familiar now.
Yeah, definitely an interesting way to run the comp, though, as well, with favourites not exactly getting the most value for points as well.
Yeah.
So now we come to the big game on the weekend, where we have the Storm, the minor premiers, taking on the Panthers. And was this just written in the stars about 6 weeks ago, and that we should have maybe skipped this whole final series and just let these two play against each other?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have many upsets, did we? It was it was pretty straightforward. The Roosters nearly took the Storm out last week in a way.
Yeah.
There was a moment.
I thought the Sharks were closer, to tell you the truth. But
I just never really gave them a shot. No, look, this is the two best teams, right? So when the two best team makes the grand final, either team could win and you'd be happy with it, right? Like in terms of reflection of the season. I'm leaning towards Storm in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to split these two teams. I think Penrith have an advantage in their middle forward rotation. Storm have that advantage with Harry Grant in particular. What my prediction is that it's going to be a bit of a beat 'em up. Penrith will get up marginally, and the Storm will win through the air. So they're going to send the ball to Warbrick and Coates, crossfield kicks. They haven't relied on that much this year. I think they will in this game, and they're going to jump all over Taruva and To'o. So that's what I reckon is going to break it open.
Yeah, very interesting point that you bring up there. It's one that I kind of wrote down as well before looking into this game. Wrote down quite a lot of stats, guys, so please excuse me. But To'o has gone against Xavier Coates 5 times in their career. To'o has scored 1 try. Xavier Coates, duck egg 0, has not scored against Brian To'o and has not scored against Penrith in general as well.
Wow.
Never scored a try against Penrith, so they might go to the right side. My big thing for Melbourne in this game, they have the second best attack in the competition. They're going up against the best defensive side. Over the last 10 games against Penrith, they've averaged 13 points a game, and that's since the 2020 grand final. In fact, actually, the losing team in these games between these two teams, 6 times out of the last 10 games, the losing team has only managed to score one try or 0 points. So we could be witnessing a bit of a drab grand final if one of these teams gets away from it. It's either been the Storm or Penrith, except for this year. The Storm won 8-0 and they also won 24-22 this year. So the Storm have won both games this year, but prior to that, I do feel like Penrith had really righted the wrongs from that 2020 grand final. And to me, this is the only way I can see Penrith getting up for a 4th consecutive grand final in a row. It's the only thing they have to check off their list, right? It was the team that beat them and started this historic run for them, gave them a reality check and said, you've come into this grand final, you've won 18 games and you lost 1 during the regular season. We're going to give you a reality check here and let you know that while you are a good young team, you won't be winning this one. And they definitely took it on the chin, took it in stride. And what we've seen over the last 3 years play out has been nothing but greatness. I just feel like this is the best way for Penrith to possibly finish off this era. They're losing a bunch of guys as well. They will be ready to go for this game.
Yeah, I mean, Luai, Fisher-Harris, Taruba, all heading off. It's going to be, I don't know. I reckon as a Penrith player or as a fan, I don't think you'd have any nerves really about this game. Like,
oh, wow.
Maybe as a player you would. As a fan though, like you'd be going into this game thinking, we won the last 3.
Yep.
We're in another grand final. I don't know. If I was a Penrith fan, I'd be almost a bit unfazed at this stage. Like I'm not going to say that Penrith fans don't deserve any more wins, but it's hard as a Para fan because I just hate Penrith so much. Trying to be a bit impartial.
I know, right? It's really coming out.
Yeah, no, it's a bit obvious. Look, I respect that they're fantastic, and look, Penrith fans, you hate Para too. Let's not make it personal, but I just come to this game and I just think. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Like, if they're going to win, it's going to be through the middle forwards, right? And Nelson Sofa-Solomon potentially being suspended is a big part of that. But they've just got stronger props, right? And they're going to win through that middle section. Their wingers start their sets better. It's going to be that. If it comes down to an even battle of field position, I think the Storm are classier and better in attack.
Definitely.
Where they're going to be able to convert those opportunities better than Penrith can. We look at last year as well against Brisbane. Brisbane were a bit more of that Melbourne sort of mold where they're a bit more of an attacking side. Yep. Better middle forwards, I'll admit there. But they were able to get out to a lead and then they had a historic
collapse
loss in a grand final, right? Like, but they were able to do that. I think Penrith might cop the same thing from Melbourne.
Interesting.
I just think Melbourne are going to be able to convert some play. Like they're just on such a high right now. And all their playmakers, like Jerome Hughes scoring 3 tries in that game last week. Cam Munster, absolutely dominant, fully fit, no problems at all. Pappenhausen looking back to his best.
That was great to see, to tell you the truth. I thought that Pappenhausen, possibly coming into this last 4, was maybe the least impactful fullback that was coming on. And no doubt I've got a couple of mates who are very good friends with Ryan Pappenhausen who let me know that he's still one of the best fullbacks in the game, especially on the back of what he did last week. I mean, the kid probably owes a few people some Supercoach and fantasy points from this year, but I do think that it was really good to see. Possibly on that break, didn't look maybe his quickest. I think back a couple of years ago, he might have finished that try and beaten Tedesco to the line, but Howarth was so good coming to his aid there. But the slicing through past Angus Crichton through Keary really deceived Keary with the inside ball on Nick Meaney as well. I do think that the Storm, while Penrith only conceded 6 points against the Sharks last week, and the Sharks threw a lot at them and got a lot of help and field position from the referees as well. I thought Penrith definitely didn't get the rub of the green in that game, but the Sharks threw a lot at them, dropped a lot of ball. But I just think Melbourne, to your point, are going to be a lot smarter about the way they attack Penrith and identifying weaknesses. And it's something that Craig Bellamy has been so good at over the last 20 years, is identifying those weaknesses. Where are these guys going to be slow? Where do we need to attack and send the ball? And I really think that the right and left side for both teams this week are going to be crucial. I think the Alamotti-Meaney matchup and the Katoa and Luke Garner matchup could decide this game, because Katoa back in round 26, scored 2 tries against Melbourne. Admittedly, he did go up against Maverick Guy that night, but I think that the right side last week also succeeded for Melbourne, and I think Meaney can definitely make a really bad defensive decision at times, and Alamotti had a lot of success last week against Talakai. Some guys can't make that defensive read at centre, and sometimes mean he can get a little bit caught out. I really expect Penrith to go back to the left this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be running straight to Katoa, right?
Yeah.
Because Katoa against anyone basically is a mismatch. But last week the Roosters are really solid. Like, he's up against Gus Crichton. It's that's more even. But Katoa is one of the best try scoring back rowers in the comp. And he can do it in a lot of ways. Like, he can score off a kick, he can score off a short ball, he can, create tries with offloads, that sort of thing too. I'm a big Katoa fan. The thing with Katoa there, though, is Penrith can compensate for that and sort of double up on him. But then you've got Jerome Hughes, who just scored 3 tries last week on his inside.
I know.
And, both wings
running
are solid, right?
Yeah.
So if you give any space on the wing, they're faster than you are.
Yep.
Right. And if you give space on the inside to, double mark Katoa, then Jerome Hughes is one of the best running halves in the comp. So I think that there's just going to be some cheap tries there involving Katoa that are going to get them over. I also think Harry Grant versus Mitch Kenny is an interesting matchup. So a lot of people talk about Kenny being underrated, blah, blah, blah. Super solid hooker, but he's not Harry Grant.
No.
And Harry Grant in this game, so there's been a few interviews with Harry Grant recently where he's talked about, he's playing a more defensive role. He's sort of playing a bit more reserved in attack. He's deferring to the halves and that kind of thing. Yeah. Oh, in fantasy it was terrible, but I think he can switch it back on whenever he wants to.
Yep.
So if he decides, oh, you know what, they're actually shutting us down the edges, they're sliding out, there's actually more space in the middle, Harry Grant's a guy who can exploit that in a heartbeat. So I just think Melbourne have a lot of things to go to, whereas Penrith are fantastic and they're super solid and they're suffocating. But in attack, they don't have that many strings to their bow.
Yep.
Right? They've kind of got the way they play and they like to play from in front and they're the best at doing that. But if it doesn't go their way, I just think Melbourne have more options, right? Like, Melbourne are a bit more unstable.
Mm-hmm.
If a team's going to get destroyed, it's probably Melbourne in this game. Like, you know what I mean? Like Penrith could choke them out, but I just think it's a close
strangulation
game.
Forward matchup as well in the middle is it's very swayed one way, and it is the Penrith way at the moment. If Penrith can really restrict Will Warbrick coming out of their own end, I don't think you have to worry about Pappenhausen too much. He doesn't seem to be running the ball back from kick returns too much. You're really only worrying about Coates and Warbrick. I think if you can tire out Warbrick a little bit more, because he looks the more damaging runner of the three at the moment, and Howarth. I think Howarth coming out of the back end.
He's got to run for 150 meters, by the way. For the Storm to win.
Yeah.
I'm sure Bellamy will be telling him this, but these are your numbers, mate.
Yep.
You're a massive unit. This is where you're going to make a difference.
Yep. Hit these numbers and then we'll be in a good spot.
Yep.
You're right, though. Jerome Hughes' running game is the massive threat for me. Interesting fact to know for the fantasy fans on this show, both times these two teams have played this year, Isaiah Yeo and Katoa have been the top fantasy scorers both times in this game. And I think that is also a big matchup in the middle that Melbourne need to win. And it's tough because Yeo is playing some great football right now.
Yeah, you make a good point there. That's probably a string to the bow that I didn't give Penrith credit for. Yep. But when Cleary was out, Yeo was actually an attacking extraordinaire.
Yeah, he was killing it.
Yeah.
So
if they need some tries, then maybe some try assists as well. Maybe he steps up into that a bit. I think it comes from the fact that they've got Lindsay Smith and Liam Henry who come off the bench and play a bit like Yeo in defense. Like, they're both very, very agile forwards who have big motors.
I love Liam Henry and Lindsay Smith as well. Another weird one as well. Lindsay Smith has topped the tackle count for Penrith both times they played Melbourne this year. I think
one of those he played edge back row.
Yeah, something like
made
that.
60 tackles. I remember that game because Liam Henry was meant to play there.
Yeah, that's right.
Last minute they swapped it, but Look, it's going to be a good grand final. Like, this is the grand final that the comp deserves right now. It sounds like you're a bit more on the Penrith side.
I'm definitely going down the Penrith side. I'm on the 4-peat train. I think I've heard a lot of people talking about it being boring and being really annoying that Penrith. I'm like, no doubt it's annoying for everyone, but I think instead of complaining about it, we need to admire greatness when it happens because comps are never as good once dynasties get ended. And I think I dropped off watching the NBA once, someone beat the Warriors, and then the Chiefs are the same thing in the NFL right now. We watch a lot of American sport, both you and I, and I think it's more popular when there is a team in there dominating each and every year because there's always two sides of the coin. There's no gray area with it. Most fans want to see them lose and fall, and that is half the comp for the Panthers at the moment. And the other side is like, I love the greatness, and it's it's not really the other side. It's just Panthers fans. But
you like them?
Look, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Penrith. I don't hate them as a club. I've never had a reason to. And I just think that going for 4, what does that make them? It possibly makes them the best side ever. I thought 3 made them the best side ever as well, but 4 is just ridiculous. And I think I've got to give them some mad props. And, beating Melbourne would be the ultimate.
If because we can definitely do this video in the off season, by the way. So the Penrith teams, which one was the best of this era? I think 2022 was their best, but because they were at that level of experience, but also they had all those studs still. They still had Kickow, Burton, all these other guys. It does make them the best for sure. And I don't sort of misconstrue. I am a Penrith hater, right? But I really enjoy hating Penrith, and I really respect their greatness. And it's actually very fun for me to hate Penrith, right? So I'm not saying it's boring.
Foil there.
Yeah, it's not boring though. It's more like, and I wish Parramatta would just go and copy Penrith.
Yep. I think a lot of teams should do that.
Yeah.
It like, how hard is it?
It's pretty hard.
Look, is it though? Because they did, they built their team off defense, right? You employed a defensive system where no one gives up. Everyone knows their role really well, and they have Nathan Cleary on the back of it.
Homegrown generational talent in the spine definitely helps,
which is something that they have to give Phil Gould a lot of credit for, because he was the guy who had that 5-year plan, turned into a 10-year plan, and look, it worked out in the end. And I don't see Phil Gould getting a lot of the credit.
He's doing it at the
Is he getting
right
back
now.
pay?
He's doing it at the Dogs right now. Like Gould's a legend.
Yeah.
Gould's an absolute legend.
He sees so far into the future that I definitely got what he was saying. And they had the talent pool to do it. They have such a large catchment area of juniors talent. It's one of the best in the country. That to not use it would be properly would be a detriment to the club.
But they're smart as well. So you look at this season and you go, all right, Nathan Cleary's been out for half the year. Parramatta were missing Moses for half the year, and they fell to absolute crap. Penrith missing Cleary half the year, and what do? They bring Schneider in, who's their backup half, and it was Sean O'Sullivan before that. It was Jack Cogger before that. They always have a competent backup halfback because they know that they need to, weather these storms, and they're not rushing guys back from injury.
Exactly.
Right? And they're planning for the finals. That's what they're playing for, right? And it's the way you got to play fantasy and Supercoach head-to-head as well. You're playing for the finals. Just get yourself into the 8, play for the finals, right?
Yep.
But that's how Penrith are playing it. So I don't know. They're really smart. They lose Luai Fisher-Harris next year. It's going to be massive. I hope they'll fall off next year. But for this year, they probably are marginal favorites. They're probably marginal favorites. When I imagine the game, I imagine the Storm making the most of the big moments. So I've got a 19-18 scoreline. Storm winning.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really close game.
Pappenhausen kicking the field goal.
I've got it being a pretty 10 meters out Munster misdirection.
Dirty little field goal. Oh, okay.
Like Penrith make an error.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting. I think the way this game is going to be refereed could play a massive part in it. If a lot gets let go, I feel like Penrith will come out on top. They're actually the marginal outsiders right now at $2.
People like the scoreline last week, I guess.
Yes, maybe. I think they're giving a lot of credit to the Storm for that one.
Yeah.
I think the Roosters maybe just gave it up a little bit towards the end and realised that they had too many injuries to go with them. But I'm in camp Panthers. I will be taking them 1-12. I do feel like the Storm will get out to a lead though in this game. They seem very hot right now in terms of the way their attack is meshing together. Not something that I would have said even 4 weeks ago. If you had told me that coming into this final series that they would have put on 236 plus score lines on teams to make it into the grand final, they've definitely looked the most impressive. Their attack is so good, but their defense can still leak a lot of points. And over the last 10 games, Penrith have averaged 18 points against them, and they've managed to restrict Melbourne to 13 points. So I think it'll be a very similar scoreline to that, and we'll also get under 30 points for this game. I don't expect it to be too attacking. I'm going to go with a 14-18 scoreline. I think Penrith could score a try late. And I'm going to go with Isaiah Yeo as man of the match. I think he gets a try in this game as well. But yeah, I think Penrith go on to win a 4th consecutive grand final, just getting it done over the Storm this week.
Okay, well, we got close games. We've both got Penrith scoring 18 points.
Yep.
I've just got a couple of extra for the Storm. But yeah, no, I think you got it right. And we have good grand final plans as well. Going to your place, sinking a bunch of beers, playing some golf in the morning.
So there'll be barbecue, beers, wings. It's always
mate,
good grand final day.
Let us know, guys, by the way, what you're doing for grand final day in the comments. I'm keen to hear what everyone does because I think it's a fun day.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be watching the WNRL game as well as the state championship where the Jets will be playing the Norths Devils. Guys, thanks for tuning into the show this week. Appreciate it so much. Let us know your tip for the grand final down in the comments section below. Like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. We will be here all off season. Thank you, Longy, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one.